Welcome to Brooklyn. Can't you just feel the gentrification going on around you? Mixed emotions about that, I suppose, but hey, it's all good. Thanks for coming. I'd like to share with you some results from two different surveys we're working on simultaneously. So some of this is actually real-time research, so you're getting a first taste of it before anybody does. We'll eventually build a series of reports. The first report on the local merchants 2017 is already available, so check it out at the site. But the Enterprise Local survey, which I'm starting out with, is brand new. We just got the results back recently, and we're just beginning to do our analysis. So my name's David Card. I'm the research director for Street Fight, and let's talk a little bit about what we're finding. One of the key challenges for this community, the companies that are selling hyperlocal technology and marketing services, is to sort of understand the differences, which are not always just nuanced. Sometimes they're big differences between a small business local merchant and an enterprise local marketer who may be trying to achieve some of the same goals, but has a whole different, installed base of technology or buying process or whatever. So part of the aims of this research is to help you better understand those customers and sell to them. And then part of the aims for the enterprise local research is to build a kind of a library of best practices and benchmarks that other enterprises can use to understand how to do local marketing better, because some of them are just getting their minds around it. So let's kick it off here. What I did was I went too fast, so if you could back up that slide 1 second. Thank you. This is a brief background of the two different surveys. The local enterprise local survey, we did a similar version about 18 months ago. This crew is about the same kind of respondents, an interesting mix of industries. These guys were a little bit smaller than the ones we reached last year, but they're still pretty big companies that are doing local marketing. The local merchant survey is a small business survey of decision makers and owner-operators, also a mix of industries. And an interesting couple of patterns we observe with that one that I'll get into in detail when I start showing you the slides is that there is a really interesting kind of a momentum play going on in the small business marketers. And that is that the more they spend on digital marketing, the more likely they are to say that they're going to increase that spending. So there's I'm going to show you a sweet spot of people who have budgets, marketing budgets of over $25,000 a year, which is about 29% of the base of local small businesses out there in the US. But it's not really just a sweet spot play. It's actually a fairly steady movement from people who spend only $1,000 a year to more and more and more, and that the increases in what they're spending and their sophistication tends to follow that. And it is a momentum play because it builds. It's not just a kind of a linear progression. It's not a log scale, but it's definitely a momentum movement. So keep that in mind. It's worth getting in early, because if you can sell somebody a product that they like, they're likely to upgrade and build more stuff and grow. You can grow with them, basically. So let's start with the enterprise local. So these are the big companies, big brands and retailers and financial services companies, and we asked them about what they're doing with their marketing, their digital marketing and support of their branches or their franchisees or their distribution partners. So what I'm going to try to do is give you one key takeaway from every slide to whet your appetite for the deeper research we'll go into. And I'm certainly going to be around for the rest of the conference, so happy to talk about results and things like that. But the key takeaway of this one might be that, especially the trends are fairly similar to what we saw 18 months ago with this kind of a advertiser or marketer, but print is down even more than before. So what this illustrates is, what that shows is that over half of the survey respondents said they were regular users of online display ads or paid social media advertising to support their local branches. And what you might see is that it feels like to me that local websites are a little bit underutilized, so there's opportunity to help them there. And then even you'll see that they're spending significantly on paid search and some of the newer technologies. It's also something that is fairly new on their radar screen. Or maybe it's less effective in their minds. I'll show you that as well. So this pattern was actually similar to one we saw last year, that about 40% of the large enterprise marketers spent over 30% of their total local marketing budget, their total digital marketing budget locally, and that a quarter of them spent over 50%. So this trend was similar to the one we saw last year, so basically that means digital spending is increasing, and increasing even more, because most of them said they were going to at least maintain it, and a good 40% said they were going to increase that mix and shift even more budget to digital. And again, this was a pattern we saw last year too, so it's basically multiplying and continuing for a couple of years in a row. And these are the areas where they're going to increase their spending. So this slide illustrates what percentage of the respondents said they were going to increase. Maintain was also very high as well. So most people are, very few are cutting back on their digital spending. And so I guess I have two takeaways here. Social media marketing is again, like last year, top of the charts and top of mind for them. They are planning on investing a lot in local sites, where I said they might have been underemphasizing it before, but it's on the radar screen and getting a boost. And even things that they are not doing a whole lot of, or not a lot of them are doing it, are getting increases like paid search and mobile. Now mobile, you might expect mobile to be right up there at the top. My hypothesis there that I need to test with more one-on-one interviews is that a lot of mobile activity in the enterprise area is still focused on the corporate site or the corporate e-commerce store. So a lot of mobile stuff is still about, is about two things. One is understanding audiences, so they're doing a lot of research via mobile data, for instance, and understanding audiences. But as opposed to doing a whole lot of targeted advertising yet, they're probably still a lot using mobile to reach audiences where the audiences are, but still probably thinking of it as almost like a broadcast medium. But I think that's changing fast. So let's look a little bit about how they manage these things, because we've seen some of their tactics and what their spending might look like. How are they getting their minds around their programs? One thing we looked at is whether the spending and authorization and analysis and management was centralized at headquarters, or where local or regional offices did had the biggest impact, and then where things were mixed. So look at this slide, and there's a couple ways of interpreting it. One is that maybe there's a little polarization. So some companies, it's either centralized or localized. But if you combine that mix on either side of the chart, you'll see that everybody, the majority of enterprise local marketers, are making decisions both places. So the bad news is, if you're a supplier, is you have to get buy-in at corporate and at local or regional operations. And there's not a tremendous amount of variety by different tactics. It's local sites, as you might expect, are a little bit more localized, but social media is pretty evenly distributed. So I guess more work, but once you're in, and once you get corporate approval, it should go smoothly, I guess. The other thing that what were these big enterprise marketers using to manage their local campaigns, and social media management tools was the top thing. A lot of them are using reputation and advanced social media analysis, I suppose. One thing that might have surprised you, and the number was actually pretty flat with last year's, is third-party digital dashboards. So that feels to me like an opportunity, that either that there's a whole lot of spreadsheets and people doing cobbling together a lot of different tools internally, or there's silos at the big companies where somebody who owns email is in one place and display is in another place, and video might be in yet a third place, and I'm sure you've run into all of those things. But it feels like there's an opportunity to sell dashboards to help them do the integration and ROI analysis and understandings. Data management platforms, which is, 2 or 3 years ago I was writing about the complete marketing cloud solution, and I was saying that DMPs were the hub of the future. Apparently they're still the hub of the future, so, but again, that's someplace that probably is an opportunity to build from. We also asked them what kind of data they collected from the local audiences, and then which of that data did they use in the most campaigns. So how did they deploy that data? Which was the most, got the most attention within the company is one way of thinking about it, I suppose. And the takeaway from this slide is they use a lot of different things. There's no winner, no clear winner. So, point of sale purchase data is up high there, and social media behavior is up high, but they're both about a third of the, showed up in a third of the campaign. So this is another thing that sort of reinforces my theme about a management platform or a dashboard for coordination across these different data sources. And then who owns that data? Marketing, we asked the respondents to rank number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of all these categories. Marketing sort of came out on top, but not by a heck of a lot, and customer service is a place where a lot of this data lies as well. So if you're selling analytics or analytics data or analytics tools or something like that, clearly customer service, sales, advertising all have a voice in there. IT is not, doesn't own the data anymore, it doesn't seem like, as much compared to the others. So that's one of the silos that might be coming down a little bit, so that's I suppose, encouraging. And then where are the opportunities or the biggest holes? So this is where we asked them what was most effective, and emails at the top and social media at the top, but nothing really stands out, and you'll see that's in contrast to the small businesses. And things like paid search that they're spending on, and the new mobile advertising, they haven't deemed those effective yet. So that's a thing you need to help them do. And what they really need the most help on, or what their biggest challenges are, again, with a ranking system, is ROI and attribution, which is probably no surprise to anybody, but customer privacy and security really popped compared to last year. So I think collecting all this data, but making sure it stays secure, and so they don't, with all the scares that are going around these days, is very high on their hot buttons list when you're selling products and services to them. So key takeaways would be the budgets are shifting to digital, social media is still on the top of mind, search and mobile is probably focused on the corporate site, but that feels like it's changing, and there's some opportunities for integration, and they probably still need to think harder about their local sites. They're collecting a lot of data, but they still need a lot of tools to manage it. So let's shift gear and talk about local merchants, small businesses, and see how they compare and contrast on some of these issues. So the first thing to observe about what they use the most often, this is consistent with surveys that we did last year and even 2 years ago or 3 years ago. Facebook, social media, email marketing, very much at the top of the lists at the expense of everything else. Print is sort of dropping off almost completely. So one takeaway is the small businesses may be even more aggressive on digital local advertising than the big businesses are. As I had said, there's this sweet spot of about a third of the businesses that spend more than $25,000 a year across their marketing programs. And the bigger businesses, the larger budget ones, are even driving this digital momentum faster. And then what they're increasing their spending on, again, what I looked at here is to compare the big budgets, the green bar, with the ones that have smaller budgets, the yellow bar. And the net results are all very positive too. They're actually quite similar to the ones on the enterprise survey, with a sort of a net result of over 30% for every category said they were increasing, and over 50 or 60% said they were at least maintaining. There were very few people that said they were cutting back their spending. But the big guys are driving it. They're the ones that are pushing the shift faster and harder. Same thing for the tactics. Social media, their favorite tactic. Email, their second favorite tactic. They're boosting their budgets, both of them, but they're also spending on a lot of the other things as well, as you can see. So some of the things that were relatively lower on the list are getting are getting investment, are getting increased spending, and much of it driven by the bigger budgets. So how do they manage their marketing programs? We asked a couple of different questions as we were trying to get at some attitudes here. And the takeaway from this one was, I thought there might be a lot of, as you'll see in a second, the biggest problem with, other than budget for a small business owner-operator, is time and resources. And so I figured they would outsource stuff, but they really tend to be more hands-on than outsourcing. and relatively few of them just want to buy leads. I think it may be that they've been burned before by buying leads that didn't convert, or maybe they just want a whole lot of transparency with the information they're getting. Because again, they do feel like even though they may be stressed for time and resources, that they want to be hands-on with their marketing programs. Again, they're using social media management tools to about the same rate as the enterprises are. Maybe even more of them are using dashboards or what they think is a dashboard than the big guys are. But again, it's not a mainstream. It's not over 50% adoption so far. So I feel like there's a good opportunity to sell that kind of a product or service in there. And when they're managing their customer data, they're spreadsheet driven. That CRM number is bloated quite a bit by the big spenders. The $25,000 plus budget guys were like 60% of them said they had a CRM program. But really, they're not using a whole lot of third-party data, and they're not using a whole lot of third-party tools to manage that data. So there may be a dumbed-down version of a dashboard that's pre-populated with third-party data that will help them understand their own customer information. That could be an opportunity there. Where do they say they need help, or what is least effective for them? Their two favorite tactics are their most effective tactics, so they're putting their money where their mouth is and increasing their spending there. Although, as you saw, they're going to increase spending on things like search, which they don't feel like they're necessarily doing very well on. Kind of, like I said, the traditional media is sort of dropping off pretty aggressively here. Traditional media is a much bigger deal still, I think, for the enterprise markets. Here's their their biggest challenges. Not enough budget, unsurprising there, but actually they're pretty keen on the ROI or the attribution, proving it drives customers into their location too. They don't think of that maybe the same thing as ROI, but it's definitely on their radar screen. And then when we explicitly ask them, where do you need the most help? Search and SEO popped to the top of the list. This is the same as it's been for the past 3 or 4 times we've done this survey, and they know that search, they probably understand that search has to happen. They don't want to get, they want their hands on it, and they want to see it be effective, but it's hard and it's difficult, and search is being disrupted tremendously right now with different kinds of entry points for searching and a kind of pattern, the user behavior is changing pretty dramatically there. So lots of good action and opportunities to help them do their marketing that way. So I'm getting close to the finish, so let me just give you some takeaways here. They're arguably more digitally focused than the enterprise, not even arguably. There's that momentum spending, get in early, and you're liable to be able to grow with them, because even though they do churn and they churn suppliers and things like that, the more they spend, the more likely they are to say they're increasing spending. Their sophistication is actually growing pretty fast. Twice as many of them are doing paid Facebook this year than did it the last 2 years ago when we did the survey previously. So they realized that Facebook isn't free. Of course, Facebook has helped them realize that. And they're actually fairly, relatively early adopters of dashboards in some ways. Search is still a problem, but it's potentially a cross-channel opportunity. So let's just take one last slide where I looked at the big guys versus the little guys. So this is the enterprise local marketers in green and the local merchants in yellow, and asked them what kind of new technologies were on their near-term horizon. Maybe they're not investing yet, but they're interested in following it. And we asked at different lists, so when there's zeros, it's because the lists were different, because it's logical to ask different types of customers about different things. But the several takeaways here: real-time location data is interesting, is on the radars of both companies, both types of company. And the small businesses might think about using it for push marketing even more aggressively than the big companies are. The big guys still believe in some traditional media, and they're very interested in addressable TV ads. So I can think of some good, they're doing streaming video pretty aggressively already, but there's traditional TV, it still plays a big role. I'm surprised that the big guys are not as interested in wallets as I think they should be, but the little guys might be more interested in it because we said payments and wallets, and so they're probably looking about mobile payments perhaps before. But wallets is a critical marketing platform and data repository, and lots of action going on there. Whereas things like beacons and chatbots are fairly low on the radar screen. So there you go. Overall takeaways: spending growing across the board, Local merchants are probably more digital than the big guys. Social is the top of both lists, and mobile data is what people are interested in the near term. And then there's a lot of empty, fallow turf, is that what you say, for management tools, I feel like. So drop me a line if you want a copy of slides. I will be around for the whole conference and look forward to talking to you. Thanks for your attention, and go to the break.